and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us right here on The Right View for a little ladies' tea. Tonight we're joined by the Daily Caller's Amber Duke, as well as the editor-in-chief of the Post Millennial, Libby Emmons. Welcome back, ladies. We had a monumental moment this week. June 16th of 2025 marked 10 years that 10 years ago, Donald Trump came down the golden escalator, and Libby changed the whole landscape. I'm going to say pretty much everything. I was going to say politically, but it kind of just changed the world and the way that so much happens. I was thinking about this and really reflecting. I mean, for our family, it was a day that I don't think any of us could have prepared for, what was kind of on the other side of that. But I was going to ask both of you, Libby and Amber, if you remember that moment, like what you thought of things, what you thought was going to happen, and whether you were right or wrong come, from June 16th of 2015. What did you think, Libby? What did you think was going to happen?
Well, I was not on this side of the political spectrum at that point. So I remember when that happened, and I remember everybody that I knew was pretty much freaking out. They thought this was just so ridiculous. They weren't scared of Trump at that point. They just thought that it was a foolish undertaking, this reality TV star, real estate billionaire getting involved in politics. And everyone was so confident about the Democrat side, about Hillary Clinton, and about that whole movement coming out of Obama. And I gotta say, at the time, I did not take Trump seriously. I lived in New York. You hear a lot of crazy things in New York, construction industry and everything else, and you think, well, who even knows what's going on? I remember a good friend of mine was part of the art department for The Apprentice. And at one point, I even ended up with like extra discarded Apprentice curtains in my house, which was pretty funny. But I was wrong. It was we should have taken Donald Trump seriously. And I think that what's interesting is that I think the Democrats not taking Trump seriously actually ended up a much better circumstance, because if they had taken him seriously, they would have gone really hard. And I think it's better that they didn't, because we ended up, as you said, the world changed, American culture changed, and I think we're better for it.
It's so cool, Libby, to hear someone who, like yourself, saw that moment and was like, this is crazy, and really took none of it seriously, and also didn't like Donald Trump. And like you said, you weren't even sort of on this side of the aisle. I think it is incredible to see what has transpired in 10 years. Amber, I'll tell you, like I said, nothing could have prepared our family for that moment. I'll never forget, I had to take off the morning from work, and I'll never forget asking my boss. I worked at Inside Edition, by the way. I was an associate producer at Inside Edition, and I had to ask my boss the day before. I said, there's something going on tomorrow morning that I'm just going to need the morning off, if that's okay. And she was like, oh, I know what's going on. Her name's Esther. She's still there at Inside Edition. And I thought, like, okay, I'll take the morning off, and then I'll come back to work, and everything will kind of just go on as normal. And Amber, it was anything but that. It was just, by the way, when I got back to our newsroom at Inside Edition, it was like full-blown chaos. People's heads were exploding, basically. And nothing was ever the same from that moment on. So give me your view 10 years ago on June 16th of 2015.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I was still in college at the time. I was at Georgetown, and the sort of common refrain was very similar to what Libby was hearing in New York, was that no one really took this seriously. They thought that this was sort of a vanity project, and being in college Republicans, where everyone was either a neoconservative or a libertarian, it was, well, Trump's not even really a Republican. And it wasn't until I started talking to people from my hometown, especially my parents, who were blue-collar people who did not go to college, who, intoned to me, Trump is saying things that we've been thinking for a long time, like his words on immigration, of the middle class being hollowed out by the elite in America, of the forever wars, was something that really resonated with them. And over time, I think what really got me was watching the media reaction to Trump and really just the lengths that they would go to lie about things that he said or exaggerate things that he said, that was when I really realized not only what a threat he was to the political establishment, but I was already so skeptical of the mainstream media and the liberal media at that point that the aggression that they showed him told me, okay, this guy's definitely onto something. And by the time election night rolled around, I was like, man, this guy better take down Hillary Clinton, otherwise we're in a lot of trouble.
Wow. So, Libby, were you a Hillary Clinton fan?
Yeah, but as I said, I wasn't really paying attention to politics.
Yeah.
So it was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm a Democrat, I'll vote for the Democrat candidate. And so I just went along with that. But then after Trump won and all of my friends just started losing their minds entirely, I was like, but don't you hope he does a good job? Because then that's better
Yeah,
for
it's
the
the
country.
president of the United States.
You know,
Yeah, you want him to be
I
successful,
want
so
the
we're
president to
successful
do
as
a
a
great
country.
job, whoever the president is, whether I voted for them
Right.
or not. And to a certain extent, I trust my countrymen. If that's who wins, that's who wins. And I'm going to be like, okay, well, we'll criticize where it's necessary and we'll cheerlead where that's appropriate and good. And so that's what I did. And we actually had there was like a 1-minute play rapid response project after the 2016 victory. And I remember the piece I wrote was basically like, you know, congratulations, Mr. Trump. I hope you do a great job because that's what's better for the country. And everyone was like, what's the matter with you? And I was like, but don't you like the country? Like, I want the country to do well. Whoever's in charge of it, I want them to do well. If they do
Yeah.
badly, I'll criticize. If they do well, I'm going to be very happy about it, regardless of what I thought going in.
What a novel concept, Libby, to want
Right?
the president of the United
Patriotism.
States,
Who
yeah,
knew?
to succeed so that the country succeeds. Amazing,
Yes.
absolutely incredible. Yeah, I was very acutely aware the second I got back to that newsroom. As I said, I went back to work, I don't know, noon or something, and I had been there to witness the whole speech that my father-in-law had given. And by the way, mind you, none of us in the Trump family had any political experience. We didn't know really anything about politics except that he was running as a Republican. I knew that like my parents had voted Republican, but I had not paid that much attention myself. But I knew the speech I heard, and I knew the intention of, you know, the sentences, and as they formed this entire speech, what he was trying to say, right? Then I got back to work. And I quickly realized that there was this effort to form some sort of a story that I didn't believe existed from witnessing that speech myself firsthand right there beside him. And so it was that moment that, I mean, hours after he announced he was running for president, that was my first moment of like, wait a minute, what's going on here? What is it that you're trying to say with your story? Because that's not the same thing that I heard whenever I was there listening to it myself. And so almost immediately I realized that there was something going on that I was not aware of previously, despite having worked in television news or a news magazine show for 5 years. It was a big shock, and it was a big like aha moment for me, and nothing was ever really the same after that. But I just wanted to take a moment and reflect on that. I cannot believe it's been 10 years, and I actually can't believe how much has happened in our country, how much has been exposed, I believe, thanks to this man. That was the first exposure, I think, for a lot of people of the mainstream media, because they immediately pounced on him, and he didn't back down. He didn't cower like a lot of people would have done in that position. He didn't apologize for anything he said. He just said, you know what? I meant what I said. China's coming for us. Mexico is sending people up through the southern border, and they are sending people who are really bad folks. We don't want them here in America. We need to make sure that we have great people here in America, and we're vetting people properly. He did not apologize, and I think that was the beginning of the end for a lot of the smoke and mirrors the mainstream media has put up, and we all know the direction after that. But it was just, it's a very cool thing to be able to look back and remember that moment and see how far this country's come. And something I think that, Amber, I was very excited about that happened over the weekend was the celebration of our United States Army's 250th birthday. The Army is a year older than the country, as a lot of people are aware. The president called the U.S. Army the greatest, fiercest, and bravest fighting force ever. And I had my kids there. Eric and I went. We sat there. We watched these tanks roll through. We watched these incredible soldiers marching. We saw Donald Trump, the commander-in-chief, swear in, all of these future great soldiers of ours. And I thought that it was just a really great moment to celebrate America and to remember that we should all be united behind our military. It is the reason America's here today. Had it not been for the United States Army, by the way, Amber, the United States would not exist right now. Here's something that my father-in-law said that I really liked. He said, time and again, America's enemies have learned that if you threaten the American people, our soldiers are coming for you. Your defeat will be certain, your demise will be final, and your downfall will be total and complete because our soldiers never give up, never surrender, and never, ever quit. They fight, 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 and they win, win, win. But Amber, not everybody was stoked about this. Some people didn't like it. What did you think about the celebration of the Army's 250th birthday?
I thought it was a very special and necessary celebration and one that all Americans should have been applauding. And it was shocking to me to hear the complaints from both Democrats, members of the media, as well as these left-wing activists who took to the streets over the weekend, complaining that Donald Trump's birthday happened to fall on the anniversary of the Army, as if the guy could pre-plan the day that he was born. And of course, the Army apparently applied for this permit, before he even got elected. So the idea that it was some kind of vanity project, I mean, you watch the parade, it's very clear this is not about the president. I mean, in part because he's commander-in-chief, but this was about the Army and this massive 250-year anniversary of victory and of courage and of fight. And it was really quite beautiful and special. I mean, I also heard people complaining about the price tag. Oh, it's $43 million. Well, the Pentagon has an annual advertising budget of $1.1 billion. $43 million seems like a drop in the bucket for what is probably the greatest Army recruitment ad that you could ever ask for. So I thought it was a really, really important historical moment, celebrating that milestone in our country's history. And it's high time that we bring patriotism and support for the troops back to this country. I think culturally we've gotten away from that so much, and it's led to a lot of these protests we're seeing where people can't even take a pause to just be happy for America, to support the people who put everything on the line. The division that we saw over the weekend, I thought, was very, very illuminating.
Yeah, Libby, I think that the recruitment aspect of it, I thought, can't be overstated. In fact, as Eric and I were sitting there watching this, he got a text from two of his friends saying, my child, as we're watching this, is saying, I want to enlist in the Army. I mean, I'm sure recruitment numbers are going to be even higher, after seeing that parade this weekend. Someone who was, I thought, really great in what he said was John Fetterman, who, as we know, is a Democrat, who, as we know, has not been a Trump fan by any means. But he said this parade is comprised of our sons, daughters, mothers, and fathers, the very best of us. Regardless of your politics, it's appropriate to celebrate the 250 years of sacrifice, dedication, and service. Thank you, John Fetterman, now one of the, Libby, maybe most reasonable Democrats out there, which is wild to say. But I totally agree with that sentiment, and I'm still trying to figure out this no kings nonsense, Libby, that went on all over the country. These people out there who were upset about this, first of all, they hoped that it would rain. It did not rain on the parade, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to report that did not happen. But they're basically the insinuation that somehow, as Amber said, this was some sort of a parade for President Trump. I have to tell you, we went back to the White House with my father-in-law after the parade, and we'd had a celebratory birthday dinner for him the night before, our whole family. So we actually weren't planning on staying for dinner, but he was like, why don't you guys, let's stay, let's hang out a little bit. He was so excited about that parade, and not one time even talked about his birthday, not one time talked about anything except how great he thought it was for our country, for patriotism. If you noticed and you watched that parade, every time these new units would come through, he would stand up and he would salute them. It was just a great moment for America. And then on the other side of it, you had to have these very clearly, I think, coordinated efforts across the country, and I'd like to know who's paying for those. The No Kings nonsense, where even out in Los Angeles, they had commercial grade fireworks that were being launched at the LAPD officers. I saw people pushing these police horses, which really gets me. Please don't mess with the horses. But overall, I'm still trying to figure out, I mean, basically, Libby, anything that Donald Trump did or supported, we always know there will be the other side. My question is, do you think it was successful for the other side, this No Kings nonsense?
No, I don't think it was successful. They had protests in 1,800 cities and towns across the country. They cost police departments probably in excess, if you want to total it up, over $45 million in all of their protests and the cleanup and all of the rest of it, and the officers that had to be standing by and enforcing, because some of these, of course, turned into riots. There were arrests in New York, Seattle, Portland, Los Angeles, name your place, Texas, San Antonio, all over the place. And I don't think that they even know what it is that they're protesting.
Yeah.
And something that's really sort of ironic about that is if you look at Toronto, they had a No Kings protest in Toronto, but they had to call it No Tyrants because they have a king, right? We don't have a king, so we can say No Kings. But the place with kings, they can't actually say No Kings. Because, they like their king. But I thought that the parade I thought it was very cool. And there were people saying, oh, this is bad timing. But you don't get to choose when 250 years comes up.
Yeah.
I loved to see the historical uniforms. I loved to, remember all of those different milestones in American history with different conflicts and stuff that were, of course, tragic in their time, but that our leaders thought were necessary. And I also, I know this probably sounds dumb, but it hadn't occurred to me that the 250th anniversary of the founding of the Army would be a year before the founding of the country. And when I realized that, I was like, oh, that actually is even cooler.
Right.
Because if we hadn't come up with the Army a year before, we would not have a country right now.
That's right. Yeah. And I mean, you think about in its time when the Army was founded, going up against, the British, who were the greatest fighting force in the world at that time. And we're grateful for our Army. We're grateful for all of our members of the military. I thought it was a great moment for them. The flyover of these World War II era planes. I was just like, I thought I had goosebumps at times. So congratulations to everybody on that. My favorite, though, last week was when President Trump was asked about this No Kings thing. I think it was like the first time he'd heard of it. And somebody said, sir, what's your response to them calling you a king and doing the No Kings thing? He's like, I don't feel like a king. I got to work really hard to get anything done.
Yeah.
A king just says do it, and they do it. So I loved his response to it. He had a great time. He was not bothered by any of the nonsense. And I don't think anybody who came to that parade was bothered by any of it, fortunately. And it worked out. We got it done. We had the fireworks in time before it started raining. So my kids were there. They did not last, I'll be honest, the whole time. They got through a little over half of that parade, maybe 2/3 of it. And it was hot, and they were hungry. And you know how it goes. So the kids didn't make it to the very, very end, but they saw the fireworks from afar, not there with us. Libby, you mentioned that some people questioned the timing of this parade, and I assume you're referring to the conflict going on between Israel and Iran. And a lot of people were talking about that. I even heard my father-in-law say, I'm not sure what to do. We've had this parade. They've had this parade planned for years, basically. As I think one of you noted, there was planning that went into this for so long. It'd be really hard to shut it down now. And but people were saying, in the midst of this conflict over there, the back and forth between Iran and Israel, maybe it's a good time not to do it. I actually would argue that I think it's a good time to show our strength on the world stage. It's a good time to remind our enemies out there, you know what? This is just one portion of our United States military. Take a look at what we have here. Do not mess with us. Do not cross any lines with us. We have a commander-in-chief who is very clear on what he expects to happen, and he doesn't bluff. He's not joking. He's not playing games. He's very serious. when it comes to the safety and security of the United States. And one of the things that concerns him is a nuclear weapon being formed in Iran. He has been very clear, Amber, that he says Iran can't have, well, he said you can't have peace if Iran has a nuclear weapon. This is a threat to the entire world if these people are able to develop a nuclear weapon. So the question is, what should the United States do right now? There has been no, interaction from the United States in this current back and forth between Iran and Israel. Clearly, things are escalating over there. You see all this footage of the back and forth, and Israel has been very successful. They've hit a couple of these nuclear sites. The nuclear program headquarters, I think, was hit. But we're talking about a country, Amber, that chants death to Israel and death to America. And it's an interesting time to see what's going on. I would say, from my perspective, I would not like to see Iran with a nuclear weapon. We have taken out, I think, 2 of their enrichment sites. I would say if there's a way we can assure the rest of the world that you can get rid of any ability for Iran to develop a nuclear weapon, in my opinion, I would want to take it. But what's your take on all of it over there, Amber?
Sure. Well, I think to your point about the timing of this military parade showing America's strength, I mean, it's important to remember that America did this prior to their entry into World War II for the exact same reason, which was to warn the world, this is what's coming for you if you cross the United States, if you decide that you are going to try to become the world superpower. They held another one at the conclusion of World War II and then at the conclusion of the Gulf War. So those types of messages on the global aspect are incredibly important. I think this Iran-Israel conflict is obviously very complicated. There's a lot of people who are very reticent to get involved in another war so soon after pulling out of Afghanistan. So far, Israel clearly has been doing an incredible job of these targeted strikes, taking out top military leaders, taking out these nuclear facilities. And I think what's important, what you said about Trump's posture, even just being a deterrent, is that there are reports now that Iran wants to start negotiations again after that 60-day deadline. The president mentioned that on Monday during his remarks at the G7, saying, well, they should have thought of that before they decided not to reach a deal in the 60 days. And even Vladimir Putin apparently telling Iran that they better come to the negotiating table unless they want to face almost certain destruction, because America is not messing around. So it's obviously a complicated decision as to whether or not the U.S. should be directly involved militarily or not. But I think just Trump's rhetoric and the way that he's approached this in actually holding to those red lines that he's set on those timetables is really important for Iran to realize that America means business.
As you know, our friend Mike Lindell has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of your life. He didn't just stop by simply creating the best pillow. Mike created the best bed sheets ever. They look and feel great, which means an even better night's sleep for me, which is crucial for my busy schedule. Mike is offering the best deal on his Giza Dream bed sheets. Any size, any color, just $49.98. That's right, you can even get queens, kings, split kings, and California kings, any size, any color, just $49.98. Order now because when they're gone, they're gone. Also, for a limited time, when your order is over $100, you will receive $100 in free digital gifts. Call 1-800-624-3945, use promo code LARA, or go to mypillow.com and make sure you use the promo code LARA for the amazing offer of $49.98 on the Giza Dream Sheets, any size and any color. Number again is 1-800-624-3945. Have you ever thought about what your investments are funding? Most Americans have no idea that their portfolios may be quietly supporting radical left-wing agendas that often run directly counter to their core beliefs and values. But it doesn't have to be that way. With Monorail's Investment Analyzer, you can uncover where your money is really going, bringing greater transparency to your financial decisions. This powerful tool helps reveal which companies your portfolio is supporting and allows you to explore options that better align with your values. Monorail also provides information about the Patriot portfolio, which includes ETFs that invest in companies that reflect pro-America principles. Whether you already invest or are just getting started, Monorail makes it easy to see how your financial future can reflect what matters most to you. No need to compromise on what you believe to build towards the future. Get up to $1,000 when you make your first deposit. Download the Monorail app today in the App Store or Google Play. Your money should reflect your mission. And now you have a way to find out. And, you know, Libby, for me, I always think about the people of Iran. You know, you have a lot of people there who probably would like to see this regime toppled, would not like to continue in the way things have been going for their country for a long time. What's interesting to me is that they have imposed nationwide internet restrictions in Iran. So the people there really don't have a sense outside of what they see in terms of what's going on overall. They don't really know where things stand with their country and the rest of the world, what else is happening in Israel or elsewhere for that matter. I thought it was also interesting that Elon Musk set up his Starlink satellites to try to help the people of Iran have access to the internet and find out a little more information. There are some people who say, look, if Iran had the ability, the people there, the citizens had the ability to rise up and overthrow this regime, that's probably what the sentiment of the country would be. But I think it's always good to remind people here in America that they're not getting a full picture over in Iran. The citizens of that country are being cut off from the internet, and that is very intentional, Libby. The leadership there does not want them to know anything about what's going on outside of what they can see.
Yeah, and from the limited reporting that we have from inside Iran, there have been protests over the past few years. I was hearing a report today that they're having a similar kind of truckers protest. I didn't get a chance to look into it, but I heard that in passing. And we know that over the past few years, women have been protesting the enforced modesty garments that they have to wear in public. So we know that, and we also know from the substantial Iranian dissident population that doesn't live in their home country that there are Iranians definitely interested in having a different kind of leadership in their country. Iran before the Iranian Revolution was a vastly, drastically different place than the one we see today. And that Iranian, the IRGC, they have been backing a lot of the anti-Israel and anti-America stuff in the Middle East. So if they were to move on, if the people of Iran could do that on their own, I think maybe they would be better off for it. We're definitely seeing in the United States a sort of a disagreement between whether or not, what moves Trump should make in terms of getting involved directly in that conflict. And so I'm very interested to see how that plays out here in the United States and what the president decides to do. You can see arguments on either side for it, but of course, Americans typically, given the past election and the sentiment, don't want to be involved in foreign wars. So it's really that's a huge question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating to watch the rhetoric on both sides and then also the propaganda coming from the people who want the president to get involved and those who want him to avoid it entirely. But I do respect and appreciate the president's backing of Israel as a major ally in that region.
Yeah, well, look, it is our closest Middle Eastern ally. We should always be supportive of them. And you look at the size of Iran and you look at the size of Israel, just look at them on a map if you never have. Israel is about the size of the state of New Jersey. And Iran is far bigger, but they're not as sophisticated. You know, this initial attack in Iran, I think they said, was years in the making from Israel's standpoint. That they
20
had
years?
Yes. Yeah. And so this has been something they've been trying to get to for so long. But it's a tough decision. Look, we have the only way you take out some of these nuclear sites that are far underground is with these bunker buster planes with the capability to actually get underground and destroy things that are far underground in these bunkers. Israel doesn't have that ability. The United States is the only place that has those planes and has those bombs to do it. And so it's a kind of a catch-22, right? You want to stay out of these conflicts. I know that President Trump has been very clear that he wants no new wars. He could go his entire first term and talk about the fact he had no new wars under his leadership. But, there is a time and a place. Some would argue that you might have to get involved. And I think if you get involved, you have to absolutely decimate any ability that Iran has to ever facilitate a nuclear weapon, because that's terrifying stuff. We certainly don't want that happening. But I agree with you, Libby. It's been very interesting to watch the back and forth here, to see how it all plays out. It's a heavy burden that the president has to weigh here. But we'll see what ultimately happens. And obviously we're praying for all the innocent people who are affected by this. It's always horrible to see these things. Something that I am looking at, and I think a lot of people are sort of turning their attention to, is we've got a mayor's race coming up in New York City. I lived in New York City for 15 years. It is, I would argue, one of the greatest cities, if not the greatest city in the entire world. I have since moved out of New York City. You might notice my background here. I'm in New York, but I'm not in New York City. I'm in Westchester. I'm out of there right now. I've got 2 kids. I don't want to be part of New York right now. They're doing something, Amber, that I think is really interesting with their mayor's race there. They're using ranked choice voting in the upcoming mayor's election. So that means voters are able to rank up to 5 candidates on the ballot from their first choice all the way down to their 5th choice. But they also have the option of only voting for their first choice. And a lot of people are arguing that this is going to impact things in maybe a negative way for Andrew Cuomo, who a lot of people thought was just kind of a shoo-in for this new job. There is an individual who a lot of people say is just as flat-out socialist. Zohran Mamdani is his name, and he is the latest highest polling individual in this mayor's race. So if you have this ranked choice voting, it actually is going to benefit him, a lot of people are saying. And that is a little bit of a scary thing for a city like New York, because New York needs some help. It has not been run appropriately for quite some time. The people of the city of New York, I think, deserve better. I think the NYPD deserves better. I think that if you got the right leadership there in New York, you could see some really great things happen for that city. But unfortunately, I don't know that we're going to see that. This is a little bit of a scary prospect. What do you think, Amber, about this New York City mayor's race?
It's been crazy to watch, and I think you're right. The New York people have basically 2 pretty terrible options. On one hand, you have Andrew Cuomo, who's ostensibly a more moderate Democrat, but also cites Trump as an existential threat to the country, and of course has a history of scandals under his belt during his time as governor. And then you have Zohran Mamdani, who is an avowed Democratic socialist, who has said that the NYPD is essentially something that should be eliminated, but also has called out Cuomo for those scandals in terms of the corruption, the sexual harassment, the nursing home, COVID cover-up. So yeah, it's sort of like picking between the least bad option. But in this case, like, are there any really redeeming qualities for either of these candidates? So I am extremely curious as to what the New York people are going to do. And on the ranked choice point, there are entire consulting firms dedicated to navigating those very complicated waters. And I'm sure that there's a lot of money flying around and will be flying around until Election Day, trying to figure out the best way for these candidates to take advantage of something that is quite novel compared to how most elections are run around the country.
Libby, these are some of Mamdani's big things, big ticket items he wants to see happen. Free buses, free childcare, city-run grocery stores, city-financed housing construction, He has no vision for slashing any other spending except for, as Amber just pointed out, the NYPD. He has a marquee vow of zero rent hikes that would devastate the city's housing stock, pushing already overstressed smaller landlords spiraling into bankruptcy, bringing a citywide version of the 1970s The Bronx is Burning nightmare. This could be really bad for New York City. I hope the people in New York are paying close attention to this mayor's race, because you had AOC out over the weekend, championing this guy, this socialist, because this is what she wants to see nationwide. This is the goal. This is how crazed that party's become. That's what they want. They want a socialist mayor of New York City, Libby.
Yeah, I think it's really. I think Mamdani is absolutely the worst idea for New York in, I don't know, in at least 100 years. I mean, he is absolutely the worst idea. AOC has endorsed him. You listed some of his priorities for policies, which are so bad. This is a city that cannot operate a soup kitchen. This is a city that can't stop the public transit from flooding. This is a city that can't keep the corner baskets clean or the rats off the street. And when I lived there, half the time if you got a blizzard, they wouldn't even plow the roads. They'd just be like, oh, we can't do that today. You just be stuck. It's a disaster. This city is it's the best city in the world. Yeah. It's the most glorious, terrific city. It's got cultural offerings. It's properly laid out in a grid format so that you can't get lost. This is a great city. All of these policies would ruin it. The city-run grocery store is terrible. Free buses, terrible. All of these things, the community policing, terrible. We know that that's bad. We know that the city does well when you have conservative leadership that comes in there and cracks skulls like Giuliani did. He got a lot of heat for that at the time. I remember that very distinctly, Washington Square getting cleaned up. Suddenly you could walk through Washington Square without being offered drugs. It was amazing. And that was in, I think, 1994. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, this is a terrible idea. He would be awful for the city. He would drive out the people who make the money and spend the money in that city. One thing that's important to remember about New York is Manhattan needs to be, it's at its best when it's a playground for the wealthy, right? When the wealthy can come in, they can buy their penthouses, they can spend money on great restaurants, they can create all these jobs, they can keep their headquarters there, they can walk to work. These executives who make millions of dollars are very happy when Manhattan is their playground. And what happens with all of that excess money? It spills out into the outer boroughs. And then the rest of the city can be happy. You can have nice parks, right? Like Bloomberg made all of these beautiful parks in the outer boroughs. You can have your affordable housing out there, your 80-20. But what Mamdani wants to do is funnel all of these programs that he thinks are going to help people. In a lot of cases, they're not going to help. Community policing is a bad idea. You're going to get your community police killed because criminals are smart. They know how to work these systems. This is a terrible idea. Everybody should vote against Mamdani. Cuomo is a terrible answer as well, but I think people should probably vote for him instead. If they can't stomach Eric Adams and his bribery, then that's probably what they should do. But what I want to know is, why do Republicans not offer the people of New York a good solution? Why don't they offer a mayoral candidate that can get things done? Like, get us a new Giuliani, let's do that.
100%. And I feel like that's what people want. The socialist wants to literally defund the police. I mean, this guy's saying he wants to take funding away from the NYPD. Remember how poorly that has worked out for so many Democrat-run cities all over this country. It's been a disaster. You take money away from the safety and security, then you have none of it. It is going to be just a hellscape there in New York. I can't even imagine how bad that would possibly be. But you need someone with a Giuliani-type energy, because you're right, Libby. Prior to Rudy Giuliani becoming the mayor of New York City, there were certain areas of New York where people just knew not to go because you'd get killed. Like, you could not go there. You couldn't. People were not going to take their families there on vacation. People were just not having it. And he came in and he cleaned it up. And sometimes you need a little bit of a strong arm to get it done. I don't know why we don't have someone here to do that, but it's a scary time. And, I've talked a lot about the fact that I've left New York City. I would love to be able to go back one day if it made sense for me.
Me too. Me too. I love New York.
Yes, but we're not going back like this. We can't.
What are you supposed to do with this? This is absolutely insane. The crime is up all over the place. The subways are a mess. The police are demoralized. You've got these protests that are out of control, people getting arrested, chucking stuff at cops. None of this should stand. And meanwhile, who's suffering in all of this? The people of New York who just live there, who live in their apartments, who go to their jobs, who pay their bills. And it's diminishing the quality of life there. And that's what matters to, that's what matters to people who live in cities. And that's what matters to New Yorkers is your quality of life. Is everything clean? Is it safe to walk home at night? Can you go out with your friends without worrying you're going to get harassed by a psychopathic crazy person, claiming that it's the second coming or something? Yeah, it's the little things.
It's the little things, like not getting harassed. It's the little things like that. Why is there so much trash also? Every time I'm in the city, because being in Westchester, I go to the city, there's just trash everywhere still. Are they not picking up the trash in New York? What is going on there? I don't know.
They don't always do well with the sanitation workers union. The sanitation workers union has the city over a barrel. And meanwhile, starting salary, I think, is over $60K just entry level sanitation.
We got to fix it. We got to get New York City back. I hope everybody votes against socialism in New York City. Just to wrap it up today, we saw a lot that Doge kind of churned out in terms of USAID. A lot of people remember. I mean, just for anyone who's trying to remember, what is it? What were the problems with that? Here are a couple of examples of the waste that we saw via USAID. Thank you, Doge, for this. $1.5 million to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia's workplaces and business communities. $70,000 for a DEI musical in Ireland. $2.5 million for electric vehicles in Vietnam. $47,000 for transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru, $2 million for sex changes and activism in Guatemala, $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt. Why the hell we're spending any money on any of this? Everybody wants to know. Turns out, Amber, it goes even farther. Your tax dollars, ladies and gentlemen, $550 million of them have now, it turns out, been part of a bribery scheme. There was an individual named Roderick Watson who basically defrauded USAID, took taxpayer dollars to the tune of, I guess, $550 million is what they're saying, because this guy received bribes worth about $1 million, including cash, laptops, thousands of dollars in tickets to a suite at an NBA game, a country club wedding, down payments on 2 residential mortgages, cell phones, and jobs for relative, just to name a few things, by manipulating the procurement process at USAID. So he would have these people, Amber, apparently, who would contact him and say, can you get my small business this loan or this job with this government entity, this department? And they would give him a little kickback. They'd give him an MBA suite. They'd give him a cell phone. They'd give him money. They'd give him a country club wedding, apparently. And it defrauded the United States taxpayers of $550 million. So this is just more, I feel like, of Doge bringing to light things that maybe those of us day to day didn't even think was happening, but there's some more wasteful spending of United States money.
This is a wild story, and I think the indictment couldn't have come down at a more perfect time to remind the American people of why the Doge project was so important. This USAID official, as well as 2 business owners, all pleaded guilty to this 10-year, $550 million bribery scheme, where you're exactly right. This guy was getting kickbacks and bribes so that he would give USAID contracts to certain business owners, and this is probably just skimming the surface, right?
Oh,
I mean, how many other examples of this are there in USAID? And I think people could possibly hear an argument for direct aid programs, poverty programs, and say, okay, well, maybe it makes sense that we should be involved in some of that. Although it's hard to make that argument when we also have, homeless veterans on our streets starving as well and sleeping out in the cold. But maybe we understand that the U.S. could be involved in those types of things. But when you dig deeper into the program as a whole, it becomes very clear that this was a slush fund for large businesses, corporations, and even in some case charities who were grifting off of the taxpayer and not delivering the services that they promised. And in other cases, a slush fund to advance left-wing social priorities around the globe. So I think it's great that Doge exposed a lot of this. and in other departments and agencies across the executive branch. I think people's eyes have really been opened to just how much they've been ripped off. And there's going to be a reckoning coming. I mean, the rescissions package, $10 billion, is a great start. I think there's a lot more places that Congress can pull back and claw back a lot of this funding, because it's become very clear that the American taxpayer has been taken for a ride.
Yeah, Libby, I look at this stuff. I mean, just reading out some of those things that that Doge found, it is infuriating. And the crazy part is, we probably, had Donald Trump not won this election, we would never know, Libby, about any of this stuff. We would just be spending and wasting this money in perpetuity. And as I think Elon Musk said, whenever Doge kind of kicked off the whole thing, you can't go on like this. You can't have this bloated federal government. You can't just have all this wasteful spending, the fraud, the abuse, this nonsense like this happening, and think that it's going to be okay for America. It's not okay. I am just grateful we know about these things, because I think Amber's right. This is probably just scratching the surface of what's actually been going on.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's definitely a surface scratching thing here. And you'll hear people say, well, government comes with a certain amount of waste, and that's just something you have to accept. But this is fraud, and this is abuse. This isn't just, too many boxes of paper clips that the office manager at HHS ordered or whatever, is going on. These are serious problems, and you're not just seeing it with USAID, although this bribery thing is insane, but you see it all over the place. Like, look at the United Institutes for Peace, right? This was crazy. They were actually advocating for the Taliban to not crack down on opium farmers in Afghanistan, because they were saying that's a bad look for Afghanis worldwide, that wasn't good for them worldwide. And they didn't
Wow.
they didn't seem to care at all about that, the drugs coming into the United States. And they had a slush fund where every time, they had extra money in their budget, they would put it into some kind of account that they would then use to fund whatever else they wanted to do for their own department, which is absolutely out of control. I think it's really important that these things be shown, right? That the American people see what it is that we're paying for, because a lot of people are taxed too much, like in New York, for example, and then that money goes to the federal government, and this is what it's getting spent on. We should be insulted that this is what they're doing with our money, and our kids can't read, and they can't do math, and our roads are covered with potholes, and this is what's going on. This is what they think is acceptable, and they keep fighting for it, right? That's the crazy thing. You show it, and they're like, oh, but, we do need to do sex change surgeries for minors in Ecuador. You're like, no. And it's just all of these stupid pet projects. And they call it, what is it? They call it soft power. But this is not the kind of soft power that America was looking for when they did things like found Voice of America Radio or something like that. This is crazy stuff. And you had the head of USAID under Biden going over to, Hungary, backing the fringe LGBTQ groups because they didn't like the government there. That is not what the American government should be doing.
Nope. Well, I think there's more to come on all of this, and just more to come overall. It's an interesting time. I see it all the time. I feel like there's so much that we're uncovering. There's so much movement here in America, around the world. It's quite a time to be alive and to witness it all. And I feel like one day, when we're old and gray, which is a very long time from now, ladies, let's be very clear, we're going to look back and tell the tale of Donald Trump's second term in office and all these things that went down. So Amber and Libby, as always, I appreciate both of you for joining us. Great conversation with you, ladies. To everybody at home, as always, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and follow. And we'll see you back here next time for more of The Right View. And I won't back down. I won't back down. Hey, baby.